Welcome to another episode of Courageous Conversations, and I'm Dr. Crystal, and I am really honored today to have a guest with me who is living in unbelievable trauma and has been open enough and willing enough and vulnerable enough to allow us into her journey right now. And so I'd like to introduce Deborah Anthony, an entrepreneur, an author, and most of all, a mother, and also a mother who has lost a son to suicide. So Deborah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today. This is one of two, maybe I've had the opportunity to talk and share. So when I do get a moment, I love when it's with people that I know very well, because I feel safe in just sharing my heart. So thank you for having me.
Well, that's what I wanted. And I wanted you to have not only an opportunity to talk about how you are moving forward, but also an opportunity to talk about what's next. Because I think that you are one of several parents, unfortunately, that I am aware of that have lost children to suicide. I'm also aware of recently a spouse who lost a newlywed spouse who lost a wife to suicide. And so, unfortunately, this is a really real journey that many people are on. And I also think that, unfortunately, mental health is still pretty taboo. And we don't want to openly discuss the pain and the trauma that's going on, not only in our lives, but in the lives of our family and our loved ones. And so I am honored to have an opportunity to talk to you about your unfortunate loss. So tell us about John.
John Wesley. John Wesley was my only boy of 5 girls, and he was what I would consider our levity. He brought the humor and made us see life on the lighter side, because I think that many times when you have a whole bunch of people in the house, you're trying to keep order, you're trying to keep structure, trying to make sure everybody's doing their homework, everybody's following the rules, and he would be the one that would either break whatever was serious that was going on with a joke or interrupt what was normal. He would disrupt it and it would just make us all say, okay, maybe we take it life way too serious.
Way too seriously.
So I was very appreciative. He was, as we've lost him, we realized he was our balance. He provided us with the balance that we needed to not take life so serious that you miss on the important things because you're so focused on getting everything right and in a row. So he definitely disrupted some things when he was here and disrupted some things on his exit, I must say.
Yes. So not to take you back, of course, but can you tell those listeners who may not know your journey, what happened with John?
He was about 16. He said, please stop calling me John Boy, I'm John. And people would say, okay, well, we'll call you JB.
Okay.
But he was adamant about coming away from the name John Boy. Sister Jada named him John Boy when he was very little, and we stuck with it and let it go. But John was in his senior year of high school and probably 4 months in. So he had went to homecoming. He was working quite a few hours. He was a gamer. Video games. He loved video games. He competed. He was in competitions. And in my opinion, a typical 17, 18-year-old who loved his friends, very social, was very hard work ethic. He worked at Arby's and he liked money. So he was always about, and he liked expensive things. And I told him if he wants those expensive things, and he had no problem buying it. I think he paid $300 for some gym shoes. And I was like, Lord, okay, but it's his money. Okay, it's his money. So just from the outside looking in, he looked like he had everything kind of the way he wanted it to be. Because he was the only boy, we weren't very strict like we were with the girls of just being very, it was kind of, he had the car, he was responsible, being where he said he would be, this is where I'm going. And so in my mind, I didn't think anything of the sort could happen, or nothing that was happening we couldn't work through.
Sure.
But I did notice about the last month of his life, he got pretty quiet. Probably the month of October, if I say, I noticed his 18th birthday scared him. I said, I want to celebrate your 18th birthday. No, I don't want a celebration. Don't celebrate me. And I was like, really? I didn't know that he was starting about that time having suicidal ideation, because just based on the patterns. And so a lot of parents don't know that when your child kind of starts withdrawing or stops talking, and I'm talking like not talking, meaning they kind of seclude on a level that is abnormal. It's one thing a teenager goes in their room, but it's another thing when they stop eating. And I didn't pay attention to it because he would always eat at work, but he really wasn't eating at home anymore. He was kind of turned into a
family.
Yeah. About 2 weeks prior, me and my husband had went to him and said, John, we could see something's going on. And I had been talking to people, and I said, hey, my son needs a counselor. I'm trying to find somebody to work with him. And he said to us, hey, I got to figure this out on my own. You all can't help me with this. And we're like, John, no, we're here for you. We want to help you. And he said, no, I don't want any help. I want to figure this out on my own. So that's another sign, things that, when your child says, I don't need your help, and they're still kind of a child under your roof, that's not a good sign either. And so we had a talk one day driving home from his job. I picked him up, and he said, I don't trust anybody. I don't even like people. And I was like, you don't like nobody? He's like, no. He said, no, I don't really trust you either. And that was another sign. So when I think about the journey, there were signals of a language that I didn't speak. And that's what I like to tell parents when I talk to them. Your child, when they're experiencing ideation, there's a seclusion that they begin to develop, but they're not speaking a normal language. So you brush it off as they're just being an aggravated teenager, or they're just in their feelings, as the kids say. So you just kind of, I knew there was something off. I just didn't know exactly what it was.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's part of the really insidious nature of mental illness, that you don't know the signs until it's too late. And oftentimes, in retrospect, as you said, you can tell that things were really not right. But it sounds like you and your husband did everything humanly possible to help him navigate where he was. He just was not receptive to what you guys were offering. And so I cannot imagine, and I think that I'm a mother of 4 sons also. Let's be honest, men and boys have a very different language around feelings and emotions. And I think that society as a whole and families in general tend to buy into that. Yeah. And so we don't push with our sons the way I think we push with our daughters. And we accept the short, curt answer or the withdrawal as something, and especially as a mother, as something that we don't understand, even though we know something is off. And so I can only imagine that you are going to help so many parents, especially so many mothers who are living this reality right now. Not just the suicide of a child, but a child who's withdrawing, a child who is finding it difficult to be involved in activities and with the family in ways that were normal. And then flip that on the other side and say, a child who's doing exactly the same thing, who doesn't have suicidal ideation. So what an incredible boulder that you must have on your shoulders of what did I miss? How didn't I see this? What did I not know? And so what I'm hoping today, because it's been a year
A little
since
over a year and a half.
since he's passed. And so I hope you don't mind me saying this. I am aware that this has been a life-altering event for your entire family, as anyone would suspect. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about life after loss, realizing that there's no way to get over that kind of loss. There's only a way to get through it. And so my hope is that you can impart some wisdom and some downright, just some thoughts and ideas about how you have been able to move forward, but still remaining completely heartbroken over the loss of your son. So I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
I'm open.
How have you changed?
Well, I have honestly been transformed because you just don't move through life the same. I have slowed down tremendously. I'm a lot more quiet and somber, and not in a depressive but more in a solace, sobering way. Life has a way of sobering you, and it presents what's real and what's not real, what's important and what's really not important. And I would say that would be the most drastic change of me slowing down to really hear what people are saying versus being always in a hurry to get somewhere. And I say in a hurry to nowhere, because you're trying. I'm a goal setter. I'm a builder. I'm determined. I'm very focused. And sometimes in all of those self drivers that you have, which I have, you miss a lot of things because you're driving to a goal. And I think that one of the things that transformed me through John is I could hear just this still small voice from him, "Mommy, slow down." And it's not that serious. He would say, "It's not that serious."
He would say
it's not that serious. And so that has been me really refocusing my whole life on what really is important, what really matters. And at the end of the day, after you've done everything you've accomplished, what does that really say for the who you are? What does it say for what matters most to you? And, I have leaned into my girls probably to their annoyance more so than their I'm in their business, and they don't like that I'm in their business somewhat. But I say, well, you would have had to lose a child not to want to be in, you would have had to go through what I went through not to be in somebody's business. Because I do feel that very strongly, had I leaned in a little harder, had I pressed how I press now, and not extremism, but more of listening. And just because your child says, "I'm okay," doesn't mean they're okay, and you stop trying to find ways. I'll never forget, over the summer, I saw he was struggling, and I took him to a very close friend of mine and said, "Hey, could you spend some time with him?" And he wouldn't get out the car. And so he would not allow, and that's one thing I can say, he became very stubborn and would not allow me to help him. I tried to get him to meet with his counselor. I don't want to meet with them. And so that was one of the things that I wish I had circumvented him and been the mother in the situation. But sometimes when it's boys, I'll say boys, because girls, you're going to be like, you're going to do what I say do. But boys, you have a tendency, especially when they're a little older, you kind of lean back and you say, "Okay, I'll take my hands off." And you kind of rest back a little bit. And I would say that I did that. But to answer, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to interrupt you just a little bit, because I know that the tendency is to try and pick apart what you didn't do. But I want to remind you, and for those who don't know, I'm a clinical therapist also. And so unfortunately, I have not only experiencing this in a professional realm, but also in an academic realm. Once someone has made their mind up, it's almost inconceivable. There's very little
It's true.
you can do to deter them. So when you said, I wish that I had helped, made him get out the car, I can guarantee you, you would have really had to make him get out that car.
Yes.
He was not moving. And that is not to say, and I don't want to confuse this with people who say, well, you should have just been stronger and, just made him do it. The insidious nature of mental health and depression and unfortunately end of life choices is that the mind has been made up. Mm-hmm. And while there's not always clarity in the sense of what we think, it is clear to them. And so I just want to offer that to you to remind you mm-hmm. that you did everything right. You sought healthcare, you sought school care, you asked the questions, you inquired with the friends and the siblings about what was different, and it still happened to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I interrupted you, so I'm sorry. Continue what you
No, and that is I think the hardest part that I have learned about suicide, or just death, period, and grief. The mind wants a conclusion.
Sure.
When someone dies of cancer, you're mad at cancer. You're mad at the fact that sickness took their body, or if someone is murdered, whomever murdered them, even if you don't know who it is, you know that there was a person, right? And so the mind goes in this circle, in this ring. And the harder part about suicide is you don't have your conclusion. You kind of come to your conclusion, or you say, well, the person was suffering mentally, or you, if they leave a note like my son did, you insinuate and say, well, maybe he was talking to me, or maybe he was talking
between the lines.
And absolutely. So I had to stop all of that, because there's a place of insanity that
absolutely
that thing tries to take you. And you're going over now. And so anyone experiencing this, I caution you, for the conclusion of the matter, you have to find that place of peace, and no one can tell you what that place of peace is. But when you find it, you have it, and you hold on to it.
So I'm so glad that you brought up grieving. And I think that one of the things that's not talked about when someone dies of suicide is the anger, because it's a double-edged sword. You're angry at the person who you lost, but you're sad that you lost that person. So it's a double-edged sword. And I think that one of the things that people often forget is anger is a part of grieving. And so it does not mean that you did not love your person, your child, your spouse, your friend, whomever. It just means that the same way you would be angry if someone shot them and murdered them, that same anger is there and underneath the surface when you have a loss. And so I think that it is important to remember, as you just so profoundly said, that you're searching for peace, and peace might not, and is usually not in the detail of the occurrence. It's in what you're able to do moving forward. And so that is why I asked you the question of how have you changed? And it was really interesting that one of the things that you said was that you are learning that some of the things you thought were really serious really aren't that serious.
Yeah.
And so you're learning to find your peace.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, how have you gone about that journey?
I look back at a year ago, and thank God I'm not where I was a year ago. It was a pretty ugly place. And I'm not ashamed of my journey of grief. I'm very transparent about it, because it really lends to, especially when you have faith and you're full of the things of God, you could lean very heavily on God is my keeper, he's my peace, and he is all of those things.
Absolutely.
But there is a humanity side of yourself that you have to face.
Absolutely.
And that was the side of myself that I didn't find very attractive. I was like, oh, that's in me. I had no clue.
So can I put a word to that and say fury, anger?
Yes, I would say fury.
Okay.
I would definitely say fury. And I would say that I was angry with my son for a very long time. And it was more of, I felt that he wanted to make a statement and he made it in his right mind or not in his right mind, which,
Absolutely.
but he made the statement he wanted to make. And, you know, because it's your child, and you feel you know your child pretty well, and you just want to whoop their butt. And it's like, you know, it takes you back to what you cannot control, what you think you or thought you could control, you could not control. And so I would say the journey was I had to fight first for myself and then fight for my children. And then I could fight and see the rest of my family. And it was first, though, me. I had to fight for my own sanity, because this is something that comes to try to torment you. I'm not gonna, anybody that say that experiencing your child committing suicide doesn't torment you, they're lying, because that's not the truth. There's a level of torment that every parent feels responsible on some level for what the behavior or the outcomes of your children.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to separate their choices from the part you played. And that was the very, if I had to say my fight was to fight for, okay, how much of this is me? How much of this is my responsibility? How much of this is lack of teaching or lack of listening or lack of not, you know? And so I had to really not allow the torment to take me out mentally and emotionally.
I am so happy to hear you say that, because the what ifs can drive you insane. And I can only imagine that going back over the minutia of all of it, separating and trying to dissect and the what ifs and the who was involved, trying to separate all that leads you further and further from the peace that you have to have in order to continue forward. So, not to take you too deep into the fury, but were you angry at God?
Well, I would say no. And I'll tell you why I could say no. The no is because I learned in previous situations in my life of trials that God is always present in everything that happens in our life. He doesn't excuse himself out the room because of trauma or trials. He doesn't say, oh, I'm gonna take a vacation while you go through this. And so
I'll be back.
the day that found out, I got quiet within that day. And I said to God, if you are in this with me, I can do this. But if you leave for 1 second, I'm getting out of here. And it meant exactly what it said. I said, but if you walk with me, if you go through this fire with me and do not leave me, but if I don't feel you and I don't know that you're here, I'm deuces. I can't do this. And that meant mentally checking out, emotionally, whatever that meant in that statement. It was a point of identification where I put like a ping, you know, and where you think this is my location. I needed to locate a place in me that was much deeper, where my roots system went much deeper than what was happening to me. And I can say, even in my darkest moments, I still felt him there. Doesn't mean it made it better, doesn't mean anything changed, but at least I knew I wasn't alone. And that for me became what I held on to throughout the entire journey. Doesn't mean it didn't get hard.
I can't even conceive of how difficult things were. So for those people, I know that you come from a family of deep faith. and I know that you are a woman of deep faith. And I know that the reason I ask that question is because that is often one of the questions that people are afraid to acknowledge, or things they're afraid to acknowledge, that in their humanity, there is a moment or time where they're angry at God, the same way they're angry at the person for leaving them in the situation that they find themselves in.
Now, that doesn't mean, I want to say this, we had some hard conversations.
Okay.
And we had some very, and we had some very pointed conversations throughout the journey, which was, you mean you couldn't let me know this? You mean we couldn't have had a talk about this? Like, we talk every day. There was some very hard conversations, but I got there was some responses that were very intimate to me. That said, and it made me say, okay, I can handle that response. Not that he cared if I could handle that response.
It was given anyway.
But it was enough to get me to each point. And I want to say this, I want to slow this down to say, this is points in a journey. This journey is not a straight line.
Absolutely.
It's more of a valley high, mountain low, mountain high, valley low type.
Absolutely.
It is not straight across. You're not going flat. It is up and down. And I think at my lowest points, there were people that came that met me at each point. And there was a point my sister saw, my oldest sister saw that I was drowning on a level that she like, okay, I know this is beyond me. And I'll tell you what she did. She spends time on Clubhouse. She got a group of mothers that had lost sons together, or children, tragically. And then one was suicide, one was murder, one was sickness. And these women got on a Zoom with me and they spoke life to me. And it changed me. Because some were 2 years in their journey, some were 4 years, some were 10 years. And just to hear them share. So that's why I don't mind sharing.
I appreciate that. I think that gift your sister gave you is a gift that many parents need, because I cannot imagine that there is not a point where you feel completely alone. And especially when you are the only in a community of a child who has committed suicide, there is no person to look to. And so I can also imagine that the finger pointing that you're doing, also you hear, what did they not do? How could they have missed that? What was not said? And then to listen to parents who have had the similar experience of losing a child and are on this the journey toward healing. And when I say healing, I don't mean a scar that's completely covered over and the injury never existed. I mean a scar that will always be there, but one that does not ooze and throb with the intensity that it did when the initial injury happened. So I thank you, and I thank your sister for giving you that gift, because hopefully that's a gift you can give to other parents. And even a parent who has not lost a child, but is feeling that they are teetering and something just not right. And there is something that they are missing, that listening to what you're saying and listening to the information that you're imparting about signs and things that you in retrospect noticed might give them a little more information into things to look for in their child and on their journey. And so I thank you for that. And again, I thank you for sharing. And I'm going to continue with a few more questions, if you don't mind. So what do you wish you had known? Not about him, but about this journey. What do you wish you had known?
I have a top number one.
Okay, give me your number one. Give me your number one.
And it's gonna sound so strange.
That's okay.
But anybody grieving, don't make any decisions in the first 90 days of grief. I know that people may tell you that. You think they're just being professional, or you think they're being polite. But what I will say is that, especially with the level of trauma, I wish I had somebody grab me and kind of duct tape me to a chair and say, hold tight and breathe. Just breathe.
Okay.
Don't do nothing. Don't think. Don't, just breathe. And I have had the opportunity in October to get that first call of a mother whose son, 14-year-old, had committed suicide. And my sister called me and said, are you ready to help a mother? And I said, yeah, I'm ready, because I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. And I was able to take her hand and just talk her through a journey of, and not save her from what she was going to experience, but just it's nice when someone can say, I understand.
From a place that's real.
And be a lifeline. And I believe that that's all our goals in life. Absolutely. Is that God allows us to be lifelines to people. A source of life to get you from one A to the next B. Right. The second thing I wish I had known, or that has caused me to about this journey, is to be kind to myself. I didn't know.
Bravo.
I didn't know. I'm learning. I would say to this day, I'm still learning how to be kind to myself. Because I was good at being my own whooping post. I knew how to self-correct myself. And what I realized is you got to give yourself grace. The grace you try to give to others, you got to give yourself grace. And I'm learning how to do that. I would say that's an everyday thing for me. It's not I got it figured out.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I think that one of the things that we as parents and mothers do, and just parents in general, is that we often give from an empty cup. And so, meaning our own vessel. And so we want to think that what we're providing is sustenance and enough, when we don't even have enough for ourselves. And so I'm so glad to hear that you are, I'm going to say, give yourself grace, because that's what I try and also remind people, is that you would never talk to a stranger the way you talk to yourself. There are things that we say to ourselves, and it doesn't have to come out your mouth, it's just in your head, that you would never say to someone you didn't know. And so the fact that we often beat ourselves up about things that we have no insight into,
sure,
is frightening. And so I thank you for that reminder to give yourself grace. So on that same vein, what are you sorry you know now?
Sorry. I know a side of pain I never wanted to know. I can't say I would have picked this as my trial or my testing. I would not say that this is, I've seen pain on a level that really sets out to destroy you. And the lows can be very low. And the highs, you ride the highs, but the lows of recognizing what is very real. There is a side of death that, you say, okay, well, depending on your belief system, you have what you hope and you believe in. And then there's still the reality of this pain of, well, what does forward look like for me? Like, I know what forward is for that person, but forward for me doesn't look the way I either envisioned it, imagined it, planned it. And so I think the biggest piece is to not live in delusion, which is as if the person never existed, and not to live in illusion as if the person is going to come back.
or was perfect, because I think that that's also something that the struggles that I know that people have had is that they then elevate that person to a status of perfection, that if they have other children in the household, it's really hard for that other child to live up to that unimaginable perfection that in reality was not real. And so the pain that you have experienced that you just spoke about, I'm going to assume that it has also infiltrated every part of your family.
All of my girls and my husband. And I can't say that, I can say we've made progress. I like that word, progress. But can I say that things are normal? I don't think they'll ever be normal.
They'll never be normal.
But we're having to build anew and create new memories. We have reached a point where we can laugh and see John in circumstances in the house. We'll talk about him. We'll bring him up or how he would have responded to a certain situation. And so it was one day we were just all sitting on the couch laughing about him. And it was probably our first time since he died. And that probably was around December or so of this past year. And I was like, wow, we actually are finding comfort in one another, which it took us a very long time to find comfort in one another, because I think our original reaction was everybody found their own corner.
Absolutely. It all also sounds like you guys found John again.
Yeah.
Not the person who suicided, but the entire person. As you started off and you talked about the person who was not only the balance, but also the person who was the levity in your family, with the laughter was the reminder of that gift that he shared with you guys and that he continues to give you. And so I'm sure that you received some amazing advice. And I'm going to go on the other side and say you have heard some things that would make you really pause and wonder how someone could say that. And so for those people who have never had that kind of experience, but are living with a loved one who has, what are top 3 do's and don'ts? And knowing that it's all individual, but I'm sure there were some things that were done that you appreciated, and then some things that made it even more difficult for you in your grieving. And if you can't, give us a synopsis. If you can, that'd be great. If you can, I understand.
Well, interesting. My journey. I have a big family. I have tremendous friend and relationship support. And I would have to say, I'm being cautious.
Politically correct. Wise.
But I have to say people's intentions are good.
Oh, absolutely.
And their intentions to see you. My caution to people is when people live their experience through your experience. Can
you explain that a little? I know you're trying not to, and you don't have to get specific.
I think that when you're experiencing this level of pain connects with pain.
Yes.
And so being very cautious or wise as you filter information that people are giving you based on their experience, because it could go two different types of ways based on their pain. I don't want to use the word projection. And the only reason I'm cautioned to use that is because I don't think that it's ill intent when someone's trying to come in and help. But I do think that it is important to seek out counsel and wisdom as you're going through grief. I don't think you should do grief alone. So anybody out there that is experiencing grief, and you may not have the finances to get in a therapist or, a counselor, find a group, because that does help. Believe it or not, when you can get around some people that may not be at the stage or the place you are. And that's something that I wish I had done a little differently in our family journey. But I was in so much pain. And I'll tell you, probably the first 3 months, I was probably out of my mind, meaning I wasn't. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, so in retrospect, I look back and I say, I don't even know who that person was. I just don't know. And whatever she said, don't hold it against me, because and so that feeling safe is important. Especially when you're at this level of vulnerability. And so, I mean, I don't know if I answered the question.
So I'm going to try and decipher what I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that oftentimes people intentionally come to help, and because of the pain that they have experienced or the traumas that they have experienced, they interject their trauma and pain onto your situation. And I'm going to also take it one step further and say, and correct me if this is incorrect, but I know that people who are grieving often find themselves comforting those who come to grieve them.
It's true.
Comfort them, because the intensity of the emotion is so raw and so strong that it's difficult for you to get to a safe place without feeling like you have to give everything in that moment.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't say that I would do the journey over again. God forbid.
I would think not. We will
on any level.
Never.
But I do have a lot of key takeaways and learnings from what I experienced, and that is the fact that let things be what they are. Don't try to fix what's really shattered and very broken. And most mothers, it is in our nature to get some super glue and some duct tape.
All together again.
And we're going to hold this together. And when you experience this level of trauma, you're going to just have to let it all fall apart and be what it is. And I was very challenged to just let it be what it was, because in my mind, I was duct taping and trying to hold as much, you're looking for what is left or what can you preserve. And I have to say, you at some point in life, you got to let go and let it be what it is. And that was hard that was a hard concept for me. I was,
and knowing how super successful you are and how focused and business minded and a planner and holding things together, I cannot imagine that it did not take every iota. No, let me rephrase that. What I think happened was things had to completely shatter.
It did.
Fall apart in order for you to then look at the pieces differently, to start putting them back together differently. That vase will never be the same, but it can still be a piece of beauty. It can still be something that is in your life that reminds you of the good times, not only the bad times. And so that's what I'm going to think was what happened with you shattering and putting things back together again. Would that be?
That's pretty good. I love mosaic pieces. Okay. I love glass put together. I love shattered glass and I love it put back together.
Yeah.
I literally love that type of art for that reason, because I believe that all is not lost with broken things and broken pieces. There's still beauty in it. So that would be a part of my life mantra of the mosaic. Anything that is put together, some shattered glass and pieces, let's do it. We're gonna make some beauty out of this. And John Wesley Christian Anthony was and is and always will be a part of my heart that makes me sensitive to others and what they may be experiencing. And I've been a life giver, meaning I love to give, but he has tapped a different side of my heart where I am a little bit more patient with people that may not be able to articulate with words what they're going through, but their actions are speaking loudly. And so, as a mother, I believe we do need to hear what our children are not saying.
Absolutely.
Versus what they're saying. The child, and I say this, the child that's talking, you're hearing exactly how they feel.
That's correct.
It's the child that's not talking that you have to say, hold on. Well, that's just, and I have to say this to mothers or just parents in general, is that child is talking and back talking and all that, how they feel. It's that child that you say, oh, they just not a burden to me. And you kind of tuck them away as whatever sum total you've put on them. Absolutely. But those are the children that really are in need of something. And it may not be that they're suicidal, but it may be them finding a way to communicate with you, whatever that might look like. And it may look like that, something different for every parent. But one of the things that I was at peace about was John's final words to his friends, to me, was, I love you. You're going to be great. He was the most encouraging kid in the last hour of his life to everyone. Mommy, I love you. I didn't know he was saying, I love you. I thought he was saying good night. He was saying, I love you, goodbye. But my point is, as you stated, a child that has their mind made up, and he was 18, and so he wasn't quite a child anymore.
He was your child.
He was my baby, and he had his mind. He was fixed on this idea, and there was nothing I could do to stop the idea. And I share that the heartbreak of my soul is that my child in the next room didn't feel like I could help him. Yes. And that he needed to do something for himself.
Yes. Yes. I thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, and for imparting words of wisdom and reminders to us parents. And so my closing question to you, you've kind of answered, and that is, how do you keep John's memory alive? What are you doing to keep his memory alive daily so that the person that he was, the young man that he'd become, is a gift to your family?
Every day I am waking up intentional about the conversations I'm having, the relationships I'm building, the why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I can help, and I don't say this just lightly and as a cliche, but my heart is that if I can help a mother slow down or pay attention, or if I can help a mother who has experienced this just with her journey with her other children to pay attention, that for me is living out his legacy every single day. So it is a day by day journey, but I'm grateful for this side of the journey as I'm navigating, and there will be more sides to this journey. I can always tell when I'm having what I call a grief day, because I start getting frustrated with everything around me. And my daughter will say, "Mommy, I think you might be grieving today." And I'll say, "You're right."
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So we are able to kind of help each other around here to say, "Wait a minute, I think you're not mad about this. I think you're really mad." And we'll slow down and say, "Yes, that is true." And so that's something we do around here to try to say, "Are you okay? Because I don't think you're okay."
You know what I love about that, and thank you, and ending with the reminder that grief is ongoing, that this is not a static ending, that there's a date and time when you're no longer grieving or it's no longer acceptable to grieve, regardless of if it's a parent, a child, a friend, that grief has its own beginning and end. And we don't do anything to dictate that. There are days you wake up and you're in the throes of it. And then there are days you wake up and you guys are giggling on the sofa about things that he did to make you guys smile. So I thank you again for the opportunity to share your journey and your story, to help us navigate how to move forward with life after loss, even such a traumatic loss as the loss of a child to suicide. I want to give you an opportunity right now to tell everyone that's listening who you are and what you do, because you are a really amazing woman. And so when I say I'm honored for the opportunity to speak with you, I know the things that you have done and you're doing. So if you would mind sharing for a few minutes.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you openly and publicly that you were my coach that helped me navigate grief. And if you are looking for someone to walk with you and coach you through this process, you are the best of the best. And I tell everyone about you because I don't think that I would have reached this place of strength and solace without some help of me navigating my own mess. This thing between your eyes is sometimes can. And so thank you. But I am a wife of 23 years to John Anthony, and I am a newly grandma of Mr. August John. And he's about 2 months now. And I have my 5 girls who all are from the ages of 20 to age 5. And so they all give me a run for my money. But
you gotta talk about the twins you have also, that the 5 girls are twins.
The 5 girls are twins. And so those are the joys of my life. I also am a business coach and a literary coach. I coach businesses that are looking to grow and scale, that are just really trying to reach new levels of income and break through barriers. And so that is what I do on a daily basis as a business coach. And I also am a 5-time author, and I help people that are looking to write a book, to get a manuscript that's ready for editing. And I love helping people build. And so that is what I feel my life's legacy will be, being a builder and a bridge. Those that some people need a bridge and some people need to know how to build. And I have
you do both.
both.
You do both. So tell us what your website is so that
it's deborahcanthony.com. And you can find my books. You can find set up a free consultation with me just to discuss your business and something you may be looking to do in the future. So I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, and thank you. And please, if you need a business coach, Deborah Anthony is the person that you need to look for. And so I thank you for the opportunity again, Deborah. And I thank you for listening to another episode of Courageous Conversations, where Deborah Anthony shared with us the journey that she's been on and the journey that she's on. And she's helped us find a way to love after loss. Thank you.